what happens when a brilliant student faces a professor determined to prove he doesn't belong. When Dr. Whitmore looked at Marcus Thompson and said, "Perhaps Mr. Thompson should reconsider whether advanced mathematics is truly his calling," he thought he was delivering the final blow to end a young man's dreams. But what Dr. Whitmore didn't expect was that his impossible questions would spark something extraordinary, a mathematical breakthrough that would change everything. This is the incredible true story of how prejudice and cruelty became the catalyst for revolutionary innovation, how one student's refusal to give up transformed not just his own life but the entire field of mathematics. You won't believe what happens when the student who was meant to fail instead invents a method that leaves professors speechless. Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now. Subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published news stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. Marcus Thompson clutched his worn backpack as he stepped into the pristine lecture hall of Eastbrook University's mathematics department. The morning sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating rows of polished wooden desks where students in designer clothes chatted casually about their weekend ski trips and internships at their parents' firms. The contrast was stark. His second-hand jeans and faded hoodie against their tailored outfits, his single battered notebook against their pristine textbooks and tablets. But Marcus had earned his place here through a full academic scholarship, graduating valedictorian from his inner-city high school. "Take any seat," called Dr. Richard Whitmore from the front, his silver hair perfectly styled, his suit immaculate. Marcus chose a middle row, nodding to Tommy Rodriguez, his only friend in the advanced calculus class, another scholarship student who understood the weight of being here. "Today we'll explore complex integration techniques," Dr. Whitmore announced, his piercing blue eyes scanning the room. They lingered on Marcus longer than necessary. Let's see who actually belongs in this advanced course. Jessica Hamilton, seated in the front row with her platinum blonde hair cascading over her Hermes jacket, smirked as she glanced back at Marcus. Her whispered comment to her friend was barely audible. Diversity quotas are getting out of hand. Dr. Whitmore began with standard problems, calling on students by name. "Miss Hamilton, solve this integral pathway," with a smooth Yapides nod. "Mr. Patterson, your turn." Another wealthy student succeeded effortlessly, earning praise about excellent preparation. Then Dr. Whitmore's gaze fixed on Marcus with predatory intensity. "Mr. Thompson, isn't it? Let's see what you can do." He wrote a complex triple integral on the board, far more difficult than the previous problems. "Solve this for us." Marcus approached the board confidently. Despite the problem's complexity, he methodically worked through the solution, applying advanced techniques he'd studied independently during late nights in the public library. The answer was correct. Dr. Whitmore said dismissively. "Lucky guess. Anyone can memorize formulas without understanding the underlying theory." Several students chuckled. Marcus returned to his seat, confused by the cold reception. For the remainder of class, Dr. Whitmore continued the pattern. Standard questions for other students, deliberately challenging ones for Marcus. Each time Marcus succeeded, Whitmore found ways to diminish the achievement. "Your homework," Dr. Whitmore announced as class ended, "is problems 1 through 10. Mr. Thompson, you'll also complete problems 15 through 25. He handed Marcus an additional sheet with problems that looked like graduate coursework. "I believe in challenging students to reach their potential." The extra problems were graduate-level work that would normally take weeks to master. Marcus stared at the sheet as other students filed out, their conversations about lunch at the country club fading into the hallway. Tommy waited by the door, anger flashing in his eyes. What was that about? Marcus shook his head, still processing the unfair treatment. "I don't know, but I'm not backing down." That evening, Marcus sat in his cramped apartment, textbooks spread across a tiny kitchen table that doubled as his desk. The fluorescent light flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows across the advanced problems Dr. Whitmore had assigned. These equations would take most students weeks to solve, yet Marcus was expected to complete them overnight alongside regular coursework. His phone buzzed. "Baby, how was your first day?" His mother's voice carried exhaustion from her double-shift cleaning hotel rooms downtown. "It's fine, Mom, just studying." Marcus didn't want to worry her. Mrs. Thompson had worked 3 jobs to help him get here, sacrificing everything for his education. Her calloused hands and perpetual fatigue were the price of his dreams. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. First Thompson to go to university. Your daddy would be proud, too." Her voice caught slightly at the mention of his father, lost to cancer when Marcus was 12. After hanging up, Marcus stared at the impossible equations covering the page. Traditional integration methods wouldn't work for several problems. They required knowledge of advanced theories he'd only read about in research papers. He began experimenting with unconventional approaches, sketching geometric representations in margins. The hours blurred together. Coffee grew cold as Marcus wrestled with problems designed to break him. But something remarkable happened around 2 a.m. Patterns began emerging. His visual approach, treating complex mathematics like 3-dimensional puzzles, started yielding solutions. By 3 a.m., he'd solved 8 of the 11 extra problems using methods he'd never seen in textbooks. His unique visual approach to complex mathematics felt natural, almost intuitive, like he was seeing mathematics from a completely different angle. The next day, Dr. Whitmore barely glanced at Marcus's work, dismissing 20 hours of intense labor with a single word: adequate. The comment stung, especially knowing Marcus had achieved what graduate students would struggle with. During class, Whitmore called Marcus to the board again. This time, the problem involved theoretical applications Marcus had never encountered. Quantum mechanics integrated with pure mathematics. He worked through it systematically, drawing on principles from physics and engineering texts he'd devoured in the library. "Interesting technique," Dr. Whitmore said coldly, "though hardly conventional. In mathematics, Mr. Thompson, we value established methods over creativity." Jessica rolled her eyes audibly. "Some people just don't understand academic rigor." After class, Tommy confronted Marcus in the hallway. "This is bullshit, man. He's targeting you deliberately. I can handle it." Marcus replied, though doubt crept into his voice for the first time. "No, this isn't normal. I've been in his classes before. He's never done this to anyone else." That night, Marcus called his mother again. Her shift had been extended. She wouldn't be home until midnight. "Mom, do you ever feel like you don't belong somewhere?" Mrs. Thompson's laugh was tired but warm. "Baby, I feel that way every day, but you know what? I belong wherever I decide to be, and you belong in that classroom because you earned it through your brilliance, not their permission." Marcus hung up with renewed determination. If Dr. Whitmore wanted to test him, he'd give him something worth testing. He opened his notebook and began developing something entirely new, a fusion of geometric visualization and algebraic manipulation that could revolutionize how complex intergroups were solved. By dawn, Marcus had filled 30 pages with equations, diagrams, and breakthrough insights. He was creating something unprecedented. "Today we'll have a special demonstration," Dr. Whitmore announced with a predatory smile that made several students shift uncomfortably. Voluntary, of course. Who would like to solve a challenging problem for the class? The lecture hall fell silent as death. Jessica examined her manicured nails with studied indifference. Other students suddenly found their notebooks fascinating, avoiding eye contact with the professor. "Mr. Thompson," Dr. Whitmore's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "You seem so eager to showcase your unique methods. Would you volunteer?" Marcus felt every pair of eyes in the room turn toward him like spotlights. This wasn't a request. It was a trap, carefully baited and perfectly timed, but backing down would confirm their assumptions about him. "Sure," Marcus said, standing slowly, his voice steadier than he felt. Dr. Whitmore's smile widened with genuine pleasure as he approached the whiteboard. What he wrote made several students gasp audibly, an equation so complex it seemed to consume the entire board. It involved advanced topology, theoretical physics applications, and integration techniques typically reserved for doctoral research. "This problem," Dr. Whitmore announced to the class with theatrical flair, "has puzzled mathematicians for years. The integration pathway requires knowledge of differential geometry, complex analysis, and theoretical frameworks most undergraduates haven't encountered." Jessica pulled out her phone with practiced stealth, subtly recording. Her whispered comment to her friend was intentionally loud enough for others to hear. This should be entertaining. Charity cases trying to play with the big kids. Marcus approached the board, his heart hammering against his ribs as he studied the problem. The complexity was staggering. Layers upon layers of mathematical concepts woven together in ways that challenged the boundaries of undergraduate knowledge. This wasn't education, it was public execution. He began working, applying traditional methods first. The equation fought back like a living thing, each branch of calculation leading to dead ends and contradictions. Sweat beaded on his forehead as minutes ticked by in agonizing silence. "Take your time," Dr. Whitmore said with false encouragement, his voice dripping with condescension, though perhaps this demonstrates why prerequisite courses exist. Snickers rippled through the classroom like a wave. Marcus tried his geometric visualization technique, the method he'd been developing, but the problem's complexity overwhelmed his emerging framework. After 20 agonizing minutes that felt like hours, Marcus set down the marker with trembling fingers. I can't solve it with traditional approaches." "Disappointing but predictable," Dr. Whitmore said, erasing the board with theatrical satisfaction. "Class, this illustrates why mathematical rigor matters more than unconventional thinking. Perhaps Mr. Thompson should reconsider whether advanced mathematics is truly his calling." Jessica's phone captured every moment of Marcus's defeat. Her staged whisper was designed for maximum humiliation. Some people just aren't cut out for elite academics. Laughter erupted across the room like a dam bursting. Marcus felt his face burn with shame and anger as he returned to his seat, each step feeling like a walk of shame. The remaining class time passed in a blur of sideways glances and barely contained snickers. As students filed out, their conversations were loud enough for Marcus to hear every cutting word. "Did you see his face? Why do they even let people like that into advanced courses?" Tommy waited until the room emptied completely. "Marcus, that was set up from the beginning. No undergraduate could solve that problem." But Marcus was already gone, pushing through the crowded hallway toward the exit, Jessica's recorded laughter echoing behind him like a curse. That evening, alone in his apartment with the weight of humiliation crushing his spirit, Marcus stared at his phone. One call could end this nightmare. He could withdraw, return home, forget this impossible dream. Instead, he opened his notebook and began writing furiously. If Dr. Whitmore wanted war, he'd give him one. Marcus sat on his apartment floor, staring at his phone for the third time that evening. The number for the registrar's office glowed on the screen, waiting for him to make the call that would end this nightmare. One simple conversation, and Jessica's laughter, the students' whispered comments, Dr. Whitmore's triumphant smirk as he erased the board. It all felt like a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. His phone buzzed with an incoming call from his mother. "Hey baby, how was class today?" Mrs. Thompson's voice carried the familiar exhaustion from another double shift, but also that warmth that had carried him through every difficult moment of his life. Marcus hesitated. He'd promised himself he wouldn't burden her with his problems, but the weight of defeat was crushing him. "Mom, what if I'm not cut out for this? What if everyone was right about me not belonging here?" There was a long pause on the other end. When Mrs. Thompson spoke again, her voice was different. "Marcus Thompson, you listen to me right now. Do you remember when your daddy got sick? When the bills were piling up and I had to work 3 jobs just to keep food on the table?" "Yes, ma'am." "Do you remember what I told you then? That the hardest battles are fought by people who have the most to lose. That giving up isn't in our DNA." Her voice grew stronger. "Baby, I've scrubbed toilets in buildings where the executives wouldn't even look at me. I've been invisible my whole life. But you're different. You're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for all of us who never got the chance." Marcus felt tears building in his eyes. "But Mom, today was one day, one moment. But you know what defines a person, what they do after they get knocked down." She paused, and he could hear her breathing heavily. "Your daddy didn't raise a quitter, and neither did I." After they hung up, Marcus sat in the silence of his apartment, his mother's words echoing in his mind. He looked around at the cramped space, the second-hand furniture, the stack of bills on the kitchen counter, the single photograph of his father on the windowsill. Tommy's voice echoed in his memory. "He's targeting you deliberately." Marcus opened his laptop and began researching. If Dr. Whitmore was singling him out, there had to be a reason beyond simple prejudice. He started with the university's faculty directory, then moved to academic publications, finally diving into newspaper archive. What he found made his blood run cold. Richard Whitmore wasn't just any professor. He was the son of Dr. Alan Whitmore, one of the most respected mathematicians in the country. Alan Whitmore had revolutionized several areas of mathematical theory, published dozens of papers, and held endowed chairs at 3 different universities. Richard had grown up in his father's shadow, attending the most prestigious schools, but his own academic record was surprisingly mediocre. No major publications, no groundbreaking research, just a solid but unremarkable career built entirely on his father's reputation. Marcus dug deeper. Student reviews from previous years painted a picture of a professor who played favorites, who seemed to take particular pleasure in challenging students who didn't fit the traditional Eastbrook mold. There were complaints buried in academic forums, whispered stories of promising students who'd been driven out of the program. But something else caught Marcus's attention, a pattern in the impossibly difficult problems Dr. Whitmore assigned. They weren't random acts of cruelty. They were specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses of traditional mathematical approaches, problems that required exactly the kind of innovative thinking that the academic establishment often dismissed. Marcus realized with sudden clarity that Dr. Whitmore wasn't just trying to humiliate him. He was trying to prove something to his father, to the entire academic community, by breaking students who thought differently, who approached problems from unconventional angles. Richard was defending the traditional mathematical orthodoxy that had made his family's reputation. It wasn't personal. It was ideological warfare, and Marcus had become the unwitting symbol of everything Richard Whitmore feared about the changing face of mathematics. Marcus closed his laptop and opened his notebook. If this was war, then he needed to understand the battlefield. He began reviewing every problem Dr. Whitmore had given him, looking for patterns, understanding the deeper strategy behind each impossible equation. By dawn, he had filled dozens of pages with analysis, diagrams, and insights. For the first time since that horrible afternoon, Marcus smiled. Dr. Whitmore wanted to prove that traditional methods were superior. Marcus would show him what innovation could accomplish. Marcus arrived at class the next morning with a new sense of purpose. He'd spent the entire night analyzing Dr. Whitmore's teaching methods, and what he'd discovered was both disturbing and illuminating. Dr. Whitmore's questions weren't random acts of academic sadism. They were carefully crafted to exploit specific weaknesses in non-traditional problem-solving approaches. Each impossible equation was designed to make innovative thinking fail spectacularly, while traditional methods appeared solid and reliable. But Marcus had found something else. Every one of these problems had an elegant solution if you were willing to abandon conventional approaches entirely. Today we'll explore advanced integration by parts, Dr. Whitmore announced, his eyes immediately finding Marcus in the crowd. "Mr. Thompson, perhaps you'd like to demonstrate your creative approaches with this problem." He wrote an equation on the board that made several students groan. It was a complex integral involving multiple nested functions, the kind of problem that would typically require pages of traditional calculations. Marcus approached the board, but this time he felt different. Instead of fear, he felt curiosity. Instead of shame, he felt anticipation. Began working, but rather than following the expected integration by parts formula, he started sketching. He drew geometric representations of the functions, visualizing the problem as intersecting shapes and flowing curves. "Mr. Thompson," Dr. Whitmore interrupted with barely concealed irritation, "this is a mathematics class, not an arts studio." "I'm solving the problem," Marcus replied calmly, continuing his diagram. Murmurs rippled through the classroom. Jessica looked up from her phone, intrigued despite herself. Tommy leaned forward in his seat. Marcus began translating his visual representation into mathematical language, but using techniques he'd developed during his late-night sessions. Instead of the traditional step-by-step integration, he was treating the entire problem as a single geometric transformation. The solution emerged cleanly, elegantly, in half the time it would have taken using conventional methods. Dr. Whitmore stared at the board, his face flushed. "That's unusual, but hardly rigorous. Mathematics requires precision, not artistic interpretation." "The answer is correct," Marcus said quietly, "and the method is replicable. Would you like me to solve another problem the same way?" The challenge hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown down. Dr. Whitmore's jaw tightened. "Very well, let's see if your techniques work consistently." He wrote an even more complex equation, one that involved theoretical applications Marcus had never encountered. But this time Marcus wasn't intimidated. He could see the pattern now. Every impossible problem was actually a puzzle designed to be solved differently. He approached the board with confidence, beginning his geometric visualization. This time, other students gathered closer, watching his unusual method unfold. As Marcus worked, he explained his thinking aloud. Traditional integration treats this as a series of separate operations, but if you visualize it as a single transformation in three-dimensional space. His hands moved across the board, creating diagrams that seemed to dance between pure mathematics and geometric art. The solution emerged naturally, almost inevitably. When he finished, the classroom was silent. Even Jessica was staring at the board with something approaching respect. Dr. Whitmore's face had gone pale. "Class dismissed," he said abruptly, erasing the board before anyone could study Marcus's work more closely. As students filed out, Marcus heard whispered conversations. "Did you see that? I've never seen integration done that way. That was actually kind of brilliant." Tommy caught up with Marcus in the hallway. "Dude, that was incredible. You just solved those problems like they were nothing." Marcus smiled, feeling truly confident for the first time since arriving at Eastbrook. "I think I'm starting to understand the game he's playing, and I think I know how to win." But as they walked away, neither of them noticed Dr. Whitmore watching from his office window, his expression dark with something that looked very much like fear. The basement study room in the library had become Marcus's secret laboratory. Tucked away in a forgotten corner of the building, surrounded by dusty academic journals and broken furniture, it was the perfect place to develop his revolutionary approach to mathematics without interference. Tommy had become his unofficial research partner, helping to verify calculations and offering encouragement when Marcus's theories seemed too radical to believe. Together they'd spent weeks refining what Marcus had started calling geometric integration, a method that treated complex mathematical problems as visual puzzles rather than abstract equations. "Show me the resonance theorem again," Tommy said, leaning over Marcus's shoulder as they worked through another impossible problem from Dr. Whitmore's collection. Marcus sketched quickly, his hands moving with the fluid confidence of someone who'd found their true calling. "See, traditional integration treats each variable as separate. But if you visualize the entire equation as a single geometric object in multidimensional space," his diagrams flowed across the page, curves that danced, surfaces that folded, mathematical relationships that revealed themselves through pure visual intuition. What would have taken hours using conventional methods resolved itself in minutes. "It's like you're seeing math in a completely different language," Tommy marveled. "No wonder Whitmore's problems don't work on you anymore." Marcus nodded, but his expression remained serious. "The question is whether anyone else will take it seriously. This isn't just a different approach, it's a complete paradigm shift. Some people won't want to accept that." As if summoned by his words, footsteps echoed in the basement corridor. Marcus quickly began gathering his papers, but it was too late. The door opened, and Jessica Hamilton stepped into the room. She stood in the doorway for a moment, taking in the scene, walls covered with mathematical diagrams. But Jessica's expression wasn't hostile. It was curious. "Is this what you were doing in class? That geometric thing?" She moved closer to one of the diagrams on the wall, studying it intently. "This looks like... Is this the Riemann hypothesis?" Tommy and Marcus exchanged glances. Jessica was known for her mathematical abilities. She hadn't earned her place in advanced courses through connections alone. "Part of it," Marcus admitted cautiously. "I'm working on a unified approach to complex integration. Traditional methods treat it as a series of separate operations, but if you visualize the entire problem space," He found himself explaining his theory, watching Jessica's face carefully for signs of dismissal or contempt. Instead, he saw something he hadn't expected: genuine intellectual curiosity. "That's actually brilliant," she said finally. "I mean, it's completely unconventional, but the logic is sound. Have you tested it on other types of problems?" For the next 2 hours, Jessica worked alongside them, her privileged background forgotten as she threw herself into understanding Marcus's revolutionary approach. Her traditional mathematical training actually helped. "He's always talking about the need for innovation in the field. Maybe—" She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "Maybe what?" Marcus prompted. Jessica met his eyes directly for the first time. "Maybe I was wrong about you. Maybe we all were." She paused, seeming to gather courage. "And maybe Dr. Whitmore is the one who doesn't belong here." As she left, Tommy whistled low. "Well, that was unexpected." Marcus nodded, but his mind was already racing ahead. Jessica's admission felt like a turning point, but he knew the real test was still coming. Dr. Whitmore hadn't given up. If anything, his attacks had become more subtle and more vicious. Marcus looked at the walls covered with his mathematical innovations, his breakthrough insights that could revolutionize entire fields of study. Tomorrow he would walk back into that classroom and face his tormentor again. But this time he wouldn't be going alone. And this time he would be ready for whatever Dr. Whitmore could throw at him. The war was far from over, but Marcus finally believed he could win it. The atmosphere in the lecture hall was different that morning. Word had spread about Marcus's innovative problem-solving methods, and students arrived early, whispering among themselves. Even Jessica sat straighter in her chair, her notebook open and ready. Dr. Whitmore entered with his usual theatrical flair, but Marcus noticed something new in his expression, a cold determination that suggested this wouldn't be an ordinary class. "Today we have a special visitor," Dr. Whitmore announced with predatory satisfaction. "Dr. Sarah Chen, our department head, will be observing our class as part of the curriculum evaluation process." Dr. Chen, a distinguished woman in her 50s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, took a seat in the back corner. Her presence immediately elevated the stake in honor of Dr. Chen's visit. Dr. Whitmore continued, "I thought we'd demonstrate the importance of mathematical rigor with a truly challenging problem," his gaze fixed on Marcus like a predator selecting prey. "Mr. Thompson, would you join us at the board?" Marcus felt every eye in the room turn toward him. This was it, the moment Dr. Whitmore had been building toward, the final humiliation designed to be witnessed by the department head herself. He stood slowly, his heart pounding but his mind clear. Whatever Dr. Whitmore had planned, Marcus was ready. The equation that appeared on the board made even Dr. Chen lean forward in her chair. It was a complex integration problem that combined advanced topology, theoretical physics, and pure mathematics in ways that seemed almost deliberately impossible. This problem, Dr. Whitmore announced to the room, repressed the cutting edge of mathematical research. It involves concepts from differential geometry, complex analysis, and theoretical frameworks that most graduate students haven't encountered. The integration pathway requires knowledge of advanced mathematical principles that simply cannot be improvised or visualized. His emphasis on the word visualized was clearly aimed at Marcus's unconventional methods. "The problem has been posed in several mathematical journals," Dr. Whitmore continued, "and to my knowledge no undergraduate has ever successfully solved it. Mr. Thompson, please demonstrate your approach." Marcus approached the board, studying the equation carefully. It was indeed formidable. Layers of complexity that seemed designed to defeat any attempt at solution. But as he stared at the problem, something remarkable happened. He began to see the pattern. The equation wasn't just complex, it was elegantly complex, with symmetries and relationships that became visible once you stopped thinking of it as a series of separate operations and started seeing it as a single, multidimensional object. "May I have a few minutes to analyze this?" Marcus asked. Dr. Whitmore's smile widened. "Take all the time you need." Marcus stepped back from the board, closing his eyes and letting his mind work. He visualized the equation as a geometric structure, rotating it in his imagination, examining it from every angle. Slowly the solution began to emerge. not as a series of calculations, but as a single elegant transformation. When he opened his eyes, he saw Jessica watching him intently, her expression one of barely contained excitement. Tommy was gripping his desk while other students leaned forward in anticipation. Even Dr. Chen had moved to the edge of her seat. Marcus approached the board and began to work, but not in any way anyone expected. Instead of diving into traditional integration techniques, he started drawing. Marcus explained as he worked. Isn't random artistic expression, it's a complete reimagining of how we approach complex integration. His hands moved with fluid confidence, creating diagrams that transformed abstract mathematical concepts into visual relationships. The equation began to unfold before their eyes, not as a series of separate problems to be solved sequentially, but as a single geometric transformation. Dr. Whitmore's expression grew increasingly tense as Marcus continued. This wasn't going according to plan. Mr. Thompson, he interrupted sharply. This is mathematics, not interpretive dance. Where are your calculations? Marcus paused, marker in hand. The calculations are embedded in the geometry. Watch. He began translating his visual representation back into traditional mathematical language, but the path he took was unlike anything anyone in the room had ever seen. Instead of the expected pages of step-by-step integration, Marcus's solution flowed naturally from his geometric understanding. The final answer emerged cleanly, elegantly, and unmistakably correct. The classroom fell silent. Dr. Chen stood up from her chair and walked to the board, studying Marcus's work with intense consternation. She traced the geometric relationships with her finger, following the logical flow from visualization to solution. Remarkable, she said quietly. I've never seen anything like this approach. Dr. Whitmore's face had gone pale. Surely this is just luck, or perhaps... No, Dr. Chen interrupted, her voice sharp with authority. This is genuine mathematical innovation. Mr. Thompson, where did you learn this method? Marcus met her gaze directly. I developed it myself, Dr. Chen. Traditional approaches weren't working for the problems I was being assigned, so I had to find a new way. Dr. Chen turned to look at Dr. Whitmore, her expression unreadable. Perhaps we should discuss the curriculum after class, Richard. The bell rang, but no one moved. Students sat frozen, still processing what they had witnessed. Marcus had done the impossible. He had solved... Dr. Chen's voice cut through the stunned silence of the classroom. Everyone may go except Mr. Thompson and Dr. Whitmore. I'd like to speak with you both. Students filed out slowly, their whispered conversations growing louder as they reached the hallway. Jessica lingered by the door, catching Marcus's eye and giving him an encouraging nod before disappearing into the corridor. Dr. Chen approached the whiteboard, studying Marcus's work with the intensity of someone examining a precious artifact. Her fingers traced the geometric patterns, following the logical flow from visualization to mathematical proof. Mr. Thompson, she said without turning around, how long have you been developing this approach? About 6 weeks, Dr. Chen. Since the beginning of the semester. And you discovered this method independently? Marcus glanced at Dr. Whitmore, whose face had gone from pale to flushed red. Yes, ma'am, I was having difficulty with some of the assigned problems using traditional methods, so I started experimenting with geometric visualization. Dr. Chen finally turned around, her expression thoughtful. Richard, what kind of problems have you been assigning Mr. Thompson? Dr. Whitmore straightened his tie nervously. Standard curriculum material, of course, perhaps with some additional challenges to help him reach his potential. May I see these assignments? There was a long pause. Dr. Whitmore opened his briefcase with obvious reluctance and handed over a folder. Dr. Chen flipped through the pages, her eyebrows rising steadily higher. These are graduate-level problems, Richard. Some of them are from current research journals. She looked up sharply. Why was Mr. Thompson receiving such advanced assignments? I believe in challenging students who show promise. This isn't challenging, Richard. This is sabotage. Dr. Chen's voice carried quiet authority. The problems are designed to be unsolvable at the undergraduate level using conventional methods. Marcus watched the exchange with growing amazement. For weeks, he'd questioned his own abilities, wondering if he simply wasn't smart enough for advanced mathematics. Now he was learning that the problems themselves had been rigged against him. Dr. Chen turned back to the whiteboard. But you solved them anyway, didn't you, Mr. Thompson? Using this remarkable geometric approach. Most of them, yes, ma'am. Show me another example. Pick any problem from Dr. Whitmore's assignments. Marcus selected one of the more complex equations from his memory and began working at the board. This time he moved with complete confidence, his geometric visualization flowing naturally into mathematical proof. The solution emerged in minutes rather than hours. Dr. Chen watched in fascination. This is revolutionary, Mr. Thompson. You've developed an entirely new paradigm for approaching complex integration. Have you considered publishing this work? Publishing? Marcus looked confused. I'm just an undergraduate. Undergraduate or not, this represents a significant advancement in mathematical theory. I'd like to arrange for some colleagues to review your method. She paused, studying him carefully. Have you considered graduate school, research mathematics? Before Marcus could answer, Dr. Whitmore cleared his throat. Sarah, surely you're not suggesting that undergraduate coursework should be abandoned in favor of artistic interpretation? Dr. Chen's expression grew cold. I'm suggesting that genuine mathematical innovation should be recognized and nurtured, not suppressed. She gathered the assignment papers. Richard, I think we need to discuss your teaching methods in detail. My office, tomorrow morning. Dr. Whitmore's face went ashen. Sarah, I can explain. I'm sure you can. Her tone suggested she wasn't interested in explanations. Mr. Thompson, would you be available to meet with me later today? I'd like to discuss your future academic plans. Marcus nodded, still processing the rapid turn of events. Yes, Dr. Chen, thank you. As Dr. Chen gathered her materials and left, Dr. Whitmore turned to Marcus with an expression of pure. You think you've won something here, he said quietly. You think your little tricks make you a mathematician. Marcus met his gaze steadily. I think I've learned that mathematics is about finding truth, not about following rules designed to keep people out. Dr. Whitmore's laugh was bitter. Naive boy, you have no idea what you've started. But Marcus was no longer intimidated. He had found his strength, his purpose, his voice. Whatever Dr. Whitmore thought he'd started, Marcus was ready to finish it. As he packed his notebook, filled with pages of geometric innovations that could reshape mathematics itself, Marcus realized that this was just the beginning. The real breakthrough wasn't solving Dr. Whitmore's impossible problems. It was discovering that the impossible was just another word for undiscoveries. Dr. Chen's office felt like a sanctuary compared to the hostile environment of Dr. Whitmore's classroom. Books lined every wall, mathematical journals stacked in neat piles, and afternoon sunlight streamed through large windows onto a desk covered with complex equations. Please sit down, Marcus, Dr. Chen said, gesturing to a comfortable chair across from her desk. I've been reviewing your work for the past 3 hours, and I have to say I'm astounded. She opened a folder containing copies of Marcus's geometric solutions. I've sent your methods to colleagues at MIT, Stanford, and Cambridge. The response has been extraordinary. Marcus felt his heart racing. Dr. Patterson at MIT called your approach the most significant advancement in integration theory in 20 years. Professor Williams at Cambridge wants to invite you to present at the International Mathematics Conference. Dr. Chen leaned forward, her eyes bright with excitement. Marcus, you've developed something genuinely revolutionary. Just trying to solve the problems Dr. Whitmore assigned. Dr. Chen's expression darkened. About those problems. I've done some investigating. She pulled out another folder, thicker than the first. What I've found is deeply disturbing. She spread papers across her desk. Student complaints, academic records, transfer requests. Over the past 5 years, Dr. Whitmore has systematically targeted promising students who don't fit the traditional academic profile. Minority students, first-generation college students, anyone who approaches mathematics differently. Marcus stared at the documents. How many? 12 students have transferred out of the program. 8 more dropped mathematics entirely. Dr. Chen's voice carried quiet anger. Brilliant minds lost because one professor couldn't accept that innovation sometimes comes from unexpected places. What happens now? Before Dr. Chen could answer, there was a sharp knock on her door. Come in, she called. The door opened to reveal a tall, distinguished man with silver hair and penetrating blue eyes, clearly an older version of Dr. Whitmore. Dr. Alan Whitmore. Dr. Chen said, rising from her chair. "I wasn't expecting you." "Sarah." The older man nodded curtly. "I came as soon as I heard about my son's situation. I understand there's been some kind of incident." Dr. Chen glanced at Marcus, then back at Dr. Alan Whitmore. "Your son has been systematically sabotaging promising students. We're conducting a full investigation." "Sabotaging?" Dr. Alan Whitmore's voice carried skeptical authority. "That's a serious accusation. Richard is upholding academic standards by assigning undergraduate students graduate-level problems designed to be unsolvable." Dr. Chen's tone grew sharper. For the first time, Dr. Alan Whitmore looked uncertain. "What do you mean, unsolvable?" Dr. Chen gestured to Marcus. "This is Marcus Thompson, one of your son's students." "Show Dr. Whitmore what you've accomplished, Marcus." Marcus stood up, feeling intimidated by the legendary mathematician's presence, but as he began explaining his geometric approach, something remarkable happened. Dr. Alan Whitmore's skeptical expression gradually transformed into amazement. "Show me," the older man said quietly. Marcus moved to the whiteboard in Dr. Chen's office and began demonstrating his method. He selected one of the most complex problems Dr. Richard Whitmore had assigned, an equation that had stumped graduate students, and began his geometric visualization. Alan Whitmore watched in complete silence as Marcus's innovative approach unfolded. When the solution emerged, clean and elegant, the renowned mathematician stepped closer to examine the work. "Extraordinary," he whispered. This changes everything." He turned to Dr. Chen, his face grave. "You said my son assigned this problem to an undergraduate, along with dozens of others at similar difficulty levels, all designed to break students who think differently." Dr. Alan Whitmore was quiet for a long moment, studying Marcus's geometric proof. When he spoke again, his voice carried deep sadness. "I spent my career believing that mathematical excellence could only come through traditional rigorous training. I taught my son that innovation was less important than adherence to established methods." He looked at Marcus directly. "I was wrong, and I fear I've raised a son who took my prejudices to dangerous extremes." He walked to the window, staring out at the campus. "This young man has accomplished something I couldn't do in 40 years of research. He's found a genuinely new way to see mathematical truth." Dr. Chen nodded. "The question is what we do about it." Dr. Alan Whitmore turned back to them, his expression resolved. "First, we make sure Mr. Thompson's innovations receive the recognitions they deserve. Second, we ensure that Richard faces consequences for his actions." He paused, meeting Marcus's eyes. "And third, we work to repair the damage done to every student my son has driven away." Marcus felt overwhelming relief. For months he'd been fighting alone against what seemed like impossible odds. Now, suddenly, he had allies, powerful ones, who could change everything. But as he looked at the papers scattered across Dr. Chen's desk, representing all the students who hadn't been as fortunate as him, Marcus realized that his personal victory was just the beginning. The real work was just starting. The disciplinary hearing took place in the university's main conference room, with its polished oak table and portraits of distinguished alumni staring down from the walls. Marcus sat beside Dr. Chen, facing a panel that included Dean Morrison, Dr. Alan Whitmore, and 3 other department heads. Dr. Richard Whitmore sat alone at the opposite end of the table, his usual confidence replaced by barely concealed desperation. "This hearing," Dean Morrison announced, "is to address serious allegations of academic misconduct and discriminatory behavior. Dr. Chen, please present your evidence." Dr. Chen stood, activating a projector that filled the wall with Marcus's geometric solutions. "Over the past 6 weeks, Mr. Thompson has solved problems that graduate students typically cannot complete. He did this using an innovative geometric approach that he developed independently." She clicked to the next slide, showing the impossibly difficult assignments Dr. Whitmore had given Marcus. These problems were deliberately chosen to be unsolvable using traditional methods. Dr. Whitmore's goal was not education, it was elimination. "That's a serious accusation," Dean Morrison said. "Dr. Whitmore, how do you respond?" Richard Whitmore straightened his tie nervously. "I believe in challenging students to reach their potential. Mr. Thompson showed early promise, so I provided him with advanced materials. Struggle with, Dr. Chen interrupted. Problems that experienced mathematicians struggle with, and this pattern extends beyond Mr. Thompson. She presented a devastating array of evidence: transfer records, student complaints, documented instances of discriminatory behavior. The pattern was clear and undeniable. Richard, I've reviewed these materials myself. Some of these problems come from my own research. You assigned active research questions to undergraduate students and expected them to fail. Father, I was upholding the standards you taught me. I taught you the importance of mathematical rigor, not the importance of destroying promising minds. The elder Whitmore's voice carried deep disappointment. What you've done is not rigorous, it's cruel. Dean Morrison turned to Marcus. Mr. Thompson, would you demonstrate this geometric method Dr. Chen has described? Marcus approached the whiteboard, his heart pounding but his mind clear. He selected one of the research problems that had stumped him weeks earlier, the same impossible equation that had led to his public humiliation. This time, however, he attacked it with complete confidence. His geometric visualization flowed naturally, transforming abstract mathematical concepts into visual relationships that revealed hidden symmetries and elegant solutions. The room watched in complete silence as Marcus's innovative approach unfolded. When the solution emerged, clean, beautiful, and undeniably correct, several panel members actually gasped. Remarkable, Dean Morrison said quietly. And you developed this method independently? Yes, sir, I had to find a new way because the traditional approaches weren't working for the problems I was assigned. Dr. Alan Whitmore stood up and examined Marcus's work closely. This is extraordinary. You've essentially created a new branch of mathematical visualization. He turned to the panel. Colleagues, what we're witnessing is genuine mathematical innovation at the highest level. One of the panel members, Dr. Rodriguez from the physics department, leaned forward. Mr. Thompson, have you considered the applications of this method beyond pure mathematics? Some of these geometric relationships could revolutionize theoretical physics. I've only just begun exploring the possibilities, Marcus admitted. Dean Morrison called for a brief recess, and the panel huddled in urgent conversation. When they returned, their decision was clear. Dr. Richard Whitmore, Dean Morrison announced formally, this panel finds you guilty of academic misconduct, discriminatory behavior, and abuse of your position. You are hereby suspended pending a full investigation, and your tenure status is under review. Richard Whitmore's face went ashen. Dean Morrison, surely, the dean continued, you will personally contact every student who has left the mathematics program during your tenure and offer them the opportunity to return with full academic support. Dr. Alan Whitmore approached his son with an expression of profound sadness. Richard, I fear I failed you as a teacher and as a father. I hope you can learn from this and find a better path. As the formal hearing concluded, Dr. Chen turned to Marcus with a smile. Mr. Thompson, the university would like to offer you a full graduate fellowship with immediate admission to our doctoral program. Your geometric method deserves proper research support. Marcus felt tears building in his eyes. Months ago, he'd nearly given up on his dreams. Now he was being offered opportunities beyond his wildest imagination. But the moment that meant the most came when Dr. Alan Whitmore approached him personally. Mr. Thompson, the distinguished mathematician said, extending his hand, it would be an honor to work with you. Your innovations have reminded an old professor that mathematics is about discovery, not dogma. As Marcus shook hands with the man who had revolutionized modern mathematics, he realized that his journey was just beginning. The boy who had been nearly broken by prejudice and cruelty had become a young man ready to change the world of mathematics forever. The war was over, but the real victory was yet to come. The International Journal of Mathematical Innovation had never featured an undergraduate's work on its cover, but Marcus Thompson's geometric integration method was about to change that precedent. The article, co-authored with Dr. Chen and Dr. Alan Whitmore, was generating excitement across the global mathematics community. Marcus stood in the same lecture hall where he'd been humiliated months earlier, but now everything was different. The room was packed not just with students, but with professors, graduate researchers, and even journalists covering what some were calling the most significant mathematical breakthrough of the decade. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Chen announced to the crowd, It's my pleasure to introduce Marcus Thompson, whose revolutionary approach to complex integration is reshaping how we understand mathematical visualization." The applause was thunderous. Marcus approached the whiteboard where he'd once faced impossible problems designed to break him, and now prepared to share insights that could benefit mathematicians worldwide. "6 months ago," Marcus began, his voice struggling with problems that seemed designed to make me fail. "Today, I want to show you how those same impossible problems became the foundation for a new way of seeing mathematical truth." He began with the same equation that had led to his public humiliation. Dr. Whitmore's ultimate challenge. But this time, as his geometric method unfolded, the audience watched in amazement rather than mockery. Tommy sat in the front row, grinning with pride. Beside him, Jessica took careful notes, having become one of the first students to master Marcus's technique. Even some of the students who had laughed at his earlier failures now leaned forward with respectful attention. "The key insight," Marcus explained as he worked, "is that complex mathematical relationships can be understood as geometric transformations. Instead of fighting through layers of abstract calculation, we can visualize the solution space directly." Dr. Alan Whitmore watched from the back of the room, his expression one of wonder and pride. The legendary mathematician had become Marcus's strongest advocate, using his influence to ensure that the young innovator received recognition from the international academic community. When Marcus completed his demonstration, the room erupted in applause. During the question period that followed, distinguished professors asked about applications, theoretical implications, and research direction. Marcus answered each question with the confidence of someone who had not only mastered his method, but understood its revolutionary potential. After the presentation, Marcus was surrounded by admirers, job offers, and research opportunities. Wanted him for their graduate program. Stanford offered a research fellowship. Cambridge invited him to spend a summer developing his theories. But the moment that meant the most came when his mother arrived, having taken time off from her hotel cleaning job to watch her son's triumph. Mrs. Thompson approached through the crowd, her work uniform a stark contrast to the academic robes around her, but her pride shining brighter than any formal attire. "My baby," she said, embracing him tightly. "Your daddy would be so proud. Mom, I couldn't have done this without you. Everything you sacrificed, every extra shift you worked, it all led to this moment." Around them, professors and researchers waited respectfully, understanding that they were witnessing something more important than academic achievement. They were seeing a family's dreams finally realized. Dr. Chen approached with a special announcement. "Marcus, I've just received word from the Mathematical Society. They want to establish the Thompson Fellowship, a scholarship program specifically designed to support innovative students from underrepresented backgrounds." Marcus felt overwhelmed by the honor, but also by the responsibility. His personal victory was becoming something larger, a chance to ensure that other students wouldn't face the barriers he'd encountered. "I'd like to dedicate the fellowship to every student who was told they didn't belong," he said, "and to every teacher who believes that innovation can come from anywhere." As the celebration continued around him, Marcus caught sight of Jessica Hamilton approaching. The once arrogant student who had dismissed him as a charity case now extended her hand with genuine respect. "Marcus, I owe you an apology, not just for what I said, but for what I failed to see. You've taught me that brilliance doesn't look like what I expected." "We all make mistakes," Marcus replied graciously. "What matters is what we learn from them." Looking around the packed lecture hall, at the faces filled with respect and admiration, Marcus realized that his journey from humiliation to triumph had become more than personal vindication. It had become proof that innovation and excellence could emerge from the most unexpected places. The boy who had nearly been broken by prejudice had become a young man ready to break barriers for others. 1 year later, Marcus stood before a new class of advanced calculus students, but this time he was on the other side of the lectern. As the youngest teaching assistant in Eastbrook University's history, he had insisted on working with introductory courses, particularly those enrolling first-generation college students. The mathematics department looked completely different now. Dr. Richard Whitmore had been quietly dismissed, taking a position at a small community college where his traditional methods might be less harmful. In his place, the university had hired Dr. Maria Santos, a brilliant young mathematician whose own unconventional background brought fresh perspectives to the program. "Today we're going to explore integration," Marcus announced to his class of nervous freshmen. "Before we begin, I want you to understand something important. There's no single right way to approach mathematical problems. Your job is to find the method that makes sense to you." In the back row, he noticed a young black woman, clearly uncomfortable and out of place, clutching a worn notebook just as he had done months earlier. Her name tag read Keisha Williams. After class, Marcus approached her. "How are you finding the transition to university mathematics?" Keisha looked surprised that a teacher would speak to her personally. "It's challenging, sir. Sometimes I feel like I don't belong here." Marcus smiled, remembering his own identical feelings. "Would you be interested in joining a study group? We meet in the basement of the library, room B12. There are other students there who understand what it's like to feel different." The basement study room had been transformed. What was once Marcus's secret laboratory was now an official study center, funded by the Thompson Fellowship and staffed by graduate students trained in diverse teaching methods. Students from all backgrounds gathered there, sharing knowledge and supporting each other's academic journeys. Tommy, now a senior pursuing his own mathematics degree, helped run the center. Jessica Hamilton, who had become one of Marcus's most dedicated supporters, volunteered her time tutoring struggling students. "It's amazing how different this place feels," Tommy said to Marcus as they watched students collaborating on problem sets. "Remember when you were down here alone, fighting impossible problems?" Marcus nodded, but his attention was focused on Keisha, who was working through an integration problem using geometric visualization, the same technique that had once seemed so radical. "The beautiful thing," Marcus replied, "is that she's not alone. None of them are." Dr. Chen found Marcus in the study center that evening, grading papers by lamplight. "The journal wants to publish your latest research," she announced. "Your work on multidimensional geometric integration is generating international interest." Marcus looked up from his papers. "That's wonderful news, but I think the work happening in this room might be even more important." Dr. Chen followed his gaze to the study groups scattered around the room. Students of every background working together, learning from each other, discovering that excellence comes in many forms. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "when you first solved Dr. Whitmore's impossible problems, I thought we were witnessing a remarkable individual achievement. Now I realize we were seeing something much larger, the birth of a new way of thinking about mathematics education." That night, Marcus called his mother as he walked across campus. Mrs. Thompson was doing well. "How was your day, baby?" she asked. "Good, Mom. I helped a student today who reminds me a lot of myself when I started here. And I think she's going to do amazing things, just like you always believed I would." As Marcus reached his apartment, he looked back at the mathematics building where his journey had begun. The lights were still on in the basement study center, where students who had once felt alone were discovering their potential together. Dr. Whitmore had tried to prove that traditional methods were superior by breaking students who thought differently. Instead, he had created the conditions for something beautiful, a new generation of mathematicians who understood that innovation comes not from conformity, but from the courage to see the world differently. Marcus Thompson had started as a young man fighting for the right to belong. He had become someone who ensured that belonging was never again something students had to fight for alone. The impossible had become inevitable, and the future of mathematics was brighter because of it. Dear friend, this story reminds us that brilliance comes in many forms and from unexpected places. Every day, talented individuals face barriers simply because they look different, think differently, or come from different backgrounds. Marcus Thompson's journey shows us that diversity isn't just about fairness, it's about innovation and progress. When we exclude voices, we lose discoveries that could change the world. Let's commit to recognizing potential wherever it appears, supporting those who feel like they don't belong, and remembering that the next great breakthrough might come from the person others overlook. Your story matters. Your perspective is valuable. Your dreams are worth fighting for. If this story inspired you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Together we can ensure that everyone gets the chance to show the world what they're truly capable of achieving.